Welcome to the Kansas City Public Library. Whew, what a night. My name is Stephen Woolfolk. I am the Assistant Director of Public Affairs at the library, and we could not be happier to be hosting the book launch for the memoir of one of Kansas City's favorite sons. Let me just say first that Crosby Kemper III sends his best. He wished that he could be here. Unfortunately, he had other things to take care of, but he, like much of Kansas City, is a big, big fan of Frank's. I have a couple of quick announcements to make. First of all, I have in my hands 2 autographed baseballs. We did a little contest via social media a couple of weeks ago, and we asked people to tweet or post on Facebook about the event and then RSVP and come here this evening. And our winners are Kathleen Connigan Gross and Greg Curtin. So if you folks would find me after the event, I have a couple of balls for you and a couple of signed copies of the book, or a couple of copies of the book that you can get signed. Now I know what you're thinking. I didn't know that the Kansas City Public Library was on the Facebook and the Twitter. We are. Go to either one, search for Kansas City Public Library, follow us. We do contests like this from time to time, but if you didn't know in advance, we have a second chance. I have here 2 more baseballs, also signed by Frank White. Now this is a nice segue because Frank is an incredibly nice guy. And if we allowed him, he would set up here after the event and sign anything that you could bring for as long as you could go. So it's my job to be the bad guy and to ask you to please stick to just books being signed this evening. However, we have these 2 additional baseballs, and what we'll do is we'll draw 2 random numbers, and as the book signing goes on, as we get to those numbers, we'll award baseballs to 2 random people that purchased the book and got it signed. So there is a second chance this evening. So on that note, first I would like to introduce Bob Kendrick. He is the president of the Negro Leagues Museum, to tell us a little bit about his relationship with Frank, as well as Frank's connection to the museum. Bob?
Thank you. Thank you. What a tremendous honor to be here representing the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum on this tremendous occasion. We couldn't be more proud of Frank. Frank, in my own personal estimation, in the echelon of athletes in our great city, ranks at the top of that list in terms of importance. And what he has given to our city, not only on the field but off the field, is to be commended. We can't thank him enough for the support that he has given to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum as one of its founding members. And I know that the late, great Buck O'Neill, and I wish he was here tonight to be a part of these ceremonies and to witness this great occasion. And as old Buck would say, you know, Buck felt wholeheartedly, and I know all of us in this room would agree, that Frank White should absolutely, positively be in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And we all agree with Buck. And so, again, it's a tremendous pleasure to be here with you all tonight. What an amazing turnout for an amazing human being who just happened to have been one of the greatest second basemen to ever play this game. And so again, on behalf of the entire staff of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, as I see in the audience here, one former Negro League Baseball Museum board member and a current Negro League Baseball Museum board member, Mr. Dick Berkeley, and of course Mamie Hughes, on behalf of our entire team at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, we are proud to be a part of this event to celebrate all the contributions that this wonderful man has made to our city. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this before I walked off. We will be celebrating Buck's 101st birthday, November 10th, 11th. You know, you couldn't have just one day of Buck. So it's November 10th, 11th, and 13th. We hope you guys will make your way to see us at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. But Frank, congratulations on the wonderful book. We look forward to doing a lot of great things with you. Guys, have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Chris Brown. Chris is the Vice President and General Manager of the Kansas City T-Bones. His connection to Frank today, it should be pretty obvious to all of us that follow baseball in Kansas City, but there's a part of that story that you might not know. Here to share a little bit with that is Chris.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you very much. What an honor it is to be here tonight with you guys. Thank you, Frank, Teresa, Lenny, and Bob. Looking forward to this night and this book. Very exciting times. I have to tell you that I had the pleasure of meeting Frank White many, many years ago. In fact, I was 15 years old, and I was one of the bat boys in clubhouse attendance years ago in that championship season of 1985. And I had that job all throughout high school and college, and it's amazing the memories and the lifetime friends I've made throughout the years. So I was 15 years old many years ago. That's actually, I guess, 28 years, come to think of it. But don't worry, Frank, I'm still 15, 18, you're still 30, 32. You can play. I'll bring the bat out. It's all good. But I'll never forget walking into the Royal Stadium then, Kauffman Stadium clubhouse on a daily basis. And it was that vast, huge clubhouse. And if you can imagine the 1970s and 80s decor, the walls were yellow, the carpet was blue. And I'll never forget as I walk in, and Frank had that locker in the corner. For those of you, it's kind of a special place. He had one of the big areas. It's kind of like that corner office in the office world. So he had that nice area, that go-to spot. He would hold court. And the bat boys actually were housed or changed in the room right next to the main clubhouse and locker room. So in effect, I lockered next to Frank for about 8 years. And there was 4 other bat boys or so, and the bullpen catcher, and the trainer perhaps. And I'll never forget all those years that Frank White, the 8-time Gold Glove winner, the 5-time All-Star, the 1980 ALCS MVP, Mr. Smooth, 2006 career hits, all with one team. He would take the time every day to check in on us 4 or 5 guys, 16, 17, 18, 20 years old, and see how we were doing every day. And as young kids, you can imagine the issues we were facing. Did we do our homework? Did we go to school? Girlfriend problems, car problems. But my point is, Frank took the time to come in and check on us, little us. Who are we? And I tell you, it was that team atmosphere, that clubhouse atmosphere that Frank helped and the other players helped bring about that led me to where I am today. You know, the clubhouse code or motto was, you take care of those who take care of you. And it didn't matter if you were the bat boy, the trainer, the janitor, the star player, the coach, or the manager. And it's that type of memories that I took from Frank and still live by today. And heck, I often say I started in this business when I was 15 years old, and I've worked in baseball mostly here in Kansas City all my life. I've never had a real job, and I owe a lot of that to Frank and the guys in the clubhouse back in the day. So I'll leave it at this. Frank, thank you very much for staying in Kansas City, for accepting my offer to join the T-Bones this past summer. We appreciate you wearing number 20 so that many of us could still reach those memories and see those memories, and you could give some more everlasting memories to those fans here in Kansas City. Without those memories, perhaps none of us would be here today. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Chris. If I could actually get you to stay out here for just a minute. And if we get Bob back, and we'll get Frank and Bill to join us. Bob Snodgrass, the publisher of Ascend Books, has a quick presentation to make.
Yeah, how about this guy, huh? First off, thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Bob Snodgrass, and on behalf of Ascend Books, I want to tell you what an honor this was to work with Bill Althaus and Frank White. I will tell you, there were some early mornings at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. The only thing that kept me going was Frank's offer of another beer. The bad news is we were on a phone call. So I couldn't take him up on that, but I do want to acknowledge the participation of two groups who are very close to Frank, I know, and they're represented by these two gentlemen here, Bob Kendrick and Chris Brown, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the Kansas City T-Bones. So on behalf of Ascend Books, I would like to present, and many of you saw it in the lobby, we had the honor of not only doing Frank's book, but we did a special collector's edition that was leather-bound, numbered, kind of a neat thing, and already autographed by Frank. And with Frank's permission, I'm going to go ahead and present book number 14 to Chris and book number 15 to Bob for display in their representative organizations, the museum and Community America Ballpark. Okay, two more books to give away. Because these books were numbered, I turned to Bill Althaus and said, okay, these are numbered books. We can only do 500 copies. Go ahead and pick a number that you would like. If hypothetically at the presentation at the library I would give you a collector's edition book, what number would you like? And Bill said, I would like number 8, representing 8 gold gloves for Mr. Frank White. So book number 8 to Bill Althaus.
Special.
Okay, one more book. Anybody want to guess what number this is going to Frank White? Book number 20 to Frank White. You guys can go ahead. You guys have a seat, and I'll turn it back over to Steve.
All right, thanks, Bob. If you will indulge me for 30 more seconds. I have the privilege of standing up here in front of you all and introducing this event. But it goes without saying, too often, there are all kinds of people at the library who their hard work and dedication goes into making these events run as smoothly as they do. So I would just like to thank, just real quickly, Jerry, Michael, Leslie, Jason, Andy, John, and Lorenzo, who were behind the scenes making sure that you all got down here and we were able to stage a fantastic event this evening. Thank you very much, guys. So with that, we'll get on to the main event. I'll keep this quick. The book is One Man's Dream, My Town, My Team, My Time. It is my profound pleasure to introduce the co-authors, Bill Althaus, a reporter for The Examiner and one of Kansas City's leading sports journalists, and one of my childhood heroes, Frank White.
My name is Bill Althaus, and I got a phone call earlier this summer, and it was one of the most remarkable phone calls I ever received. It was from Frank White, and Frank's about 5 years older than I am, and I followed every stage of his career. In fact, I was a kid, my mom's sitting right over here, she brought me to a game at Old Municipal Stadium, and this skinny kid was there, and they introduced him as somebody from the academy, and I had to go up and get his autograph. And how would I ever dream 40-some years later I'd be working with him on a book? It was Frank White, and he was there with some of the guys that came up from the baseball academy that Mr. Kaufman started, and it's certainly a focal point of this book. But you think of Frank White, you think of the brilliance in the field, you think of the leadership in the clubhouse. A lot of people may not realize it, but he's only the second baseman in the history of baseball to hit cleanup in the World Series. I'm sure there are people out here, who was the first? Jackie Robinson. Pretty good company. Pretty good company. You know, Buck O'Neill was a good friend of mine. I used to be the co-host of the luncheons at the Negro League Baseball Museum. And Buck told me, as long as I'm around, Frank's going to have a voice for the Hall of Fame. And Buck is no longer here, but I had a wonderful conversation with Ozzie Smith when he was in town for the All-Star game. And Frank, you've got Ozzie in your corner, so if you've got the wizard, that's pretty good. I know you don't want to hear me ramble on, so we're going to have a little conversation, touch on some of the highlights of the book. And Frank, why did you pick this time to write your autobiography?
Well, Bill, I wrote a book in 2004. It was a book on baseball fundamentals called As Good as Gold. And it went a few more years, and the author of that book was Matt Fulks. And Matt and I talked occasionally about doing an autobiography, but I kept putting him off because I wanted to wait to see if I'd get a manager's job. And I thought that would be the last thing I would need to add to that before I wrote the book. So as things started to progress and go the way they went, and it appeared that I wasn't going to get an opportunity to manage in the major leagues, then Teresa and I talked a little bit about it, and we really felt like this was time. You know, Bob Snodgrass, talked to him a little bit. You know, he thought it was a good time to write the book. But I think I wrote the book to give people an insight on my career. I think it's a great story. I think how I got involved in coming to Kansas City from Greenville, Mississippi, to growing up in the shadows of Old Municipal Stadium. My junior high school was on the south side of the stadium, my senior high school on the west side of the stadium. And the days that we would get up in the stands and look over into Municipal Stadium and watch the A's play, and being able to watch Satchel Paige pitch 3 innings against the Red Sox, being able to watch Campaneris and Reggie Jackson and all those guys break in with the A's before they left to go to Oakland. I think all those things about me that people probably would like to know. You know, the nights that George Toma, the great groundkeeper for the Royals, who would open the gates in the 7th inning and let us sneak into games to get a peek at the game live. You know, so there were a lot of good things that really just spurred my interest in saying, you know, this is a good story. The academy, coming up through the academy, getting to the major leagues, and being that guy on the bench for 2 or 3 years, waiting an opportunity to play, but not sitting idly by, you know.
Academy Frank?
You know, the entitlement stuff, you know. So I went to winter ball, I went to Venezuela 2 winters, went to Puerto Rico 1 winter, you know, just honing my skills, just trying to get better. And I just wanted to write it also because it was a great time to write it because of the Hall of Fame. I think that having my statistics there, having an awareness of where I am in terms of Bill Mazeroski, things like that. I think that was another reason for writing it. But I think a lot of it is you just wanted to just get your story out there. And I think my story is a good story. And I want people to take that away from this book, my story growing up in KC and just reliving that dream of playing for the hometown team and being able to get so much accomplished with one organization and being able to be in a position where your dad, who worked so hard with you growing up, could just pick and choose every day that he can go watch his son play baseball and don't have to go very far. So those are the reasons I wanted to write this book.
How much fun was it for you to just talk about the old days, talk about the academy, talk about those early days when John Mayberry refused to call you Frank White? He called you Academy Frank. I mean, you know, it...
Well, I think that as an academy player, the perception was that you were Mr. Kaufman's Bobo, you know, you was Mr. Kaufman's baby, and you know, you were untouchable, and everything that you got was going to be given to you regardless of whether you earned it or not. And so I think once I made my way through the minor leagues and got to AAA, and I think I was probably hitting around 300 when Freddie got hurt in June. I came up. And so basically you have to earn your stripes, so to speak. And I think that what I like about those days with John being my first roommate and being able to play with Amos and Hal and some of those guys, what I like about it is that they were guys who didn't let you make excuses. You know, they kept the game simple. They just said, either you're going to do the job, you're not going to do the job. I don't care about rain or snow or cold or heat. That doesn't play a part. You know, they said we make our mistakes, we admit our mistakes, and we get better from our mistakes. So they had a high accountability. They wanted to win. They were close to winning, and I think that's what I like about these guys that I played with. And I think the fans who had the opportunity to see a lot of these guys play realized that we had some of the greatest players in baseball play here for quite a long time.
Well, I think that's what made that team so special. You know, every time you went out, Amos was in center, Willie was in left, John was at first, Darryl might be behind the plate, you know, variety of amazing pitchers. And when did you get the sense that you were onto something special, that the Royals could really break through and become not just a successful expansion team, but a team that could vie for a championship?
Well, Bill, I think it was probably 1976. I had been a utility guy for 2.5 years, and when you look at a team come together, the Royals did some big things between 1970 and 1973. You know, they made trades for Amos Otis, John Mayberry, Cookie Rojas, Freddie Patek, Hal McRae. And then in 73, then there was me and George, and in 74 there was Dennis Leonard and Al Collins and John Wathan, and then in 76, I think that it was our year. I mean, I think that was the year that we were putting it all together. And then you know Steve Busby was on top of his game, and Split was on top of his game, and it seemed like every move that the Royals made, whether it be trade or whether it be you know through the trade route or bringing guys from the minor leagues, it just seemed like it was the right one at the right time, and we just didn't miss a step. When a guy went away, we had Willie Wilson. When Freddie left, we had Yoel Washington. So we just had guys who continued to step in. And Yoel, you know, being another Academy player, you know, we were the double play combo in the '80 World Series, and that really, I think, really put a stamp on Mr. Kaufman's dream of the Academy being a success.
That had to be so special, sharing that with UL, and a long way from walking into your room and finding a rattlesnake in your closet.
That's for sure. You got to read about that one.
1976, 1977, 1978, win the division, lose to the Yankees. 1979, kind of a year where things are retooled. It's Whitey Herzog's last year. 1980, you finally break the jinx and you have an American League Championship Series for the ages.
Well, I tell you, Bill, that the '76 when I was on the bench in the fifth game, and I remember when Shamlis hit the home run, and the fans just, you know, they just came across the barriers. They were all over the field. They were still in grass they were still in bases. They was taking a pitch of rubber home plate, and we don't even know if if Chris Shamlis ever made it to home plate or not. And I was sitting in the dugout. I think when the fans were sitting behind the dugout, they assumed that the dugout goes all the way to the field, but it didn't. It only went like halfway. So you had all these people plummeting into the dugout, and so, but you know what I took away from that was, you know, it had to be a good feeling, and you know the Yankees had a long drought before 1976, and the Orioles were really the class of that Eastern Division for a long time. And when George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees, so '76 was really that was the first year that they started to turn things around for themselves too. And so I think when you see it for the first time, you always say, "Man, I want to be a part of something like that." And I think that 1980 was probably the most pressure I ever felt as a player, because you'd already lost three pennants to the Yankees, and you're trying to figure out how you're gonna play them a fourth time and how you're going to get this thing accomplished. And I think everywhere I went, fans were yelling, "You guys just can't let these guys do this again. You guys got to beat the Yankees." And I think that was probably the most pressure I ever felt as a player. I mean, before game one, I couldn't even sleep, so I got up and went to the park at 6 o'clock in the morning and climbed on the training table and slept like a baby for a couple hours. But I think it was just that intense. I think it was the first time I watched our team, and everybody just had a different look about themselves. Everybody was in their own locker. It was almost like everybody was watching TV in their own locker. But you can see the concentration that everybody had on their face, and I think everybody was feeling the same thing, but we weren't saying it. And when we started that series in 1980, you could tell that this team was about to turn the corner, and it was kind of nice to sweep the Yankees, and we just sort of felt like each game was 76, next game was 77, the next game was 78, and so now we're in our first World Series, and that was just a great feeling.
And the World Series doesn't go as you'd hoped, and I know a lot of guys on the team said, well, maybe our World Series was beating the Yankees, but you certainly didn't feel that way.
No, I didn't agree with that. I mean, you beat the Yankees, but now you got the World Series to play. And I think if Philadelphia had really just went in there and just really took it to us, and we didn't have an opportunity to compete, then I would have said, okay, maybe the thought process should have been that way. But when you think back to those games against the Phillies, in Game 1, we had a 4-0 lead at one point. In Game 2, we had a 4-2 lead in the 8th at one point, and we won Game 3 and 4. And in Game 5 here in Kansas City, we had a 3-2 lead in the 9th. So I don't think you can say that that the Yankees series was your World Series, because it was right there for us to take, and we just didn't get it done.
Well, maybe you just needed to go through the back door like you did in '85. A 1-3 deficit against Toronto. Same thing against the Cardinals. And tell us a little bit about that series against the Blue Jays.
Well, the Blue Jays are a great team. I mean, they were about as talented as we were. They had power, they had speed, they had pitching, and Bobby Cox was the manager. And the thing that really helped us in '85 with the Blue Jays was that was the first year that they went to a 7-game playoffs in the ALCS. And if it had been a 5-game playoff, they would have just spanked us and sent us on home. But I think by having the 7 games to play, it gave us a chance to hang in there. And then just like the Giants did with the Cardinals, they just took it a game at a time. And then finally, last night, they jumped over that hurdle. And I think that's what happens when they allow you to fight back and even the series. Then now the momentum swings to your team. And regardless of whether the starting pitcher's already beaten you twice already, it doesn't matter, because you've got that extra momentum, you got that feeling that you can beat a Dave Steve after he's already beaten you twice, and Jim Sundberg hitting a triple to get us going in that game. And you feel like you can beat a John Tudor, even though he's beat you twice, shut you out once. You feel like you can win that game, which we did. So I think that there's a lot to be said for momentum. There's a lot to be said for believing that you can win. But I think that it all starts with you just going out wanting to win from the beginning. And I think our team, we had those type players who didn't really want to give up. We had guys we had so many great players. And with great players, you have so many great leaders. Everybody leads in a different way. And it seemed like regardless of which way they led, it was the right way. And there was always somebody there, to pat you on the back, somebody to kick you in the butt, somebody to keep you going. But the biggest thing was we just had such a high accountability factor about our guys. So when you came to the ballpark, it wasn't about I got a stomach ache, I got a headache, and back in those days, guys said, well, there's some Alka-Seltzer over there on the shelf. So they made us go through a lot of things before we didn't play that game. We had to go through batting practice. We had to go through infield practice. We had to take an Alka-Seltzer if it's an upset stomach. So guys really wanted to make sure that you were able to play, because when we first started playing, there was no free agency. And so everybody was on 1-year contracts, and we were making a lot of money. So the money was going to be made at the end of the year. So if you were fortunate enough to have a starting position, then guys expected you to be there to play every day. And when you get up in the morning, I don't think there's any greater feeling as a player is when you get up in the morning knowing that somebody's expecting you to be somewhere and looking for you to be there and be there on time. And I think that's kind of what I got from that.
How much confidence did coming back against the Blue Jays give you when you were down 3-1 against the Cardinals?
Well, I think you give individual confidences. Just like against the Blue Jays, Hal McRae says, we got them right where we want them now, that kind of thing. So those things really give you confidence. Or sitting in the locker room in St. Louis next to Willie Wilson facing the deciding game, and ABC's sitting there, they hanging up lights, and I looked at Willie and I said, man, we live 2 blocks from this place and we don't have a bus, so if we lose this game tonight, we're not going to get home. And so Willie looks up at the guy hanging lights and he says, man, I don't want to say the words exactly that he used, but he said, you need to take those lights down we're not going to be no crying in this locker room tonight. So I think it's just those little individual things that guys keep saying to each other that really keeps you motivated and keeps you going. And I think that's why I like the fact that I was able to play with just a great, diverse bunch of guys and who didn't take no for an answer, guys who came to play every day.
How special was it for you to hit cleanup in that series and to have Dick Hauser, who caught a lot of heat for that decision, have that type of confidence in you?
Well, he might have got a lot of heat for it, but I had a lot of heat too. I mean, I had a lot of apprehension. I mean, just playing for Whitey, I knew that anytime he had an opportunity to walk Brett to pitch to me, he would do that. And so I had to really come to grips with, okay, this is going to happen. George was batting third, and he wanted to stay there. So I said, okay. I told Dick, I said, look, I'll bat fourth for you. I said, if I do well, they'll write about it. And I said, if I don't, they'll say I should have been there in the first place. But I think that sort of relaxed me, and I went into the game. And I basically, when you talk about guys hitting in different positions in the lineup, it's really, to me, that's more of a cop-out than anything else. I think guys have to know themselves, and they have to really understand that the manager's asking you to bat in a different position, but he's not asking you to change the type of hitter that you are. So when he asks you to bat in these positions, he knows what kind of hitter you are. You just have to know yourself what kind of hitter you are. So the guys that go in and try to do too much, those are the guys that usually fail. And so when I went to bat fourth, I said, okay, if I have to bunt, I'll bunt, which I think I got a bunt base hit in that series. If I've got to move guys over, then I'll move guys over. And if I get in a good hitting count, then I'll try to drive the ball out of the ballpark. So you have to have a plan when you go in, but it's not where you hit. It's your approach and your belief in what you can do and your belief in knowing who you are as a player.
In the first victory at St. Louis, you get a home run. What was it like running around the bases?
I sort of floated.
Did you even touch the ground?
Not really. I think it's probably the furthest home run I think I ever hit. I mean, when I hit it, I know I hit it well, but you always pick up the outfielder, and if the outfielder's not moving, the first thought is it's a fly ball to the outfielder. But when he starts to turn and look over his shoulder, you realize that he has no chance to catch it, so I really, really felt good about that.
Bringing a World Series championship to the hometown, how special was that?
That was the best. Yeah. I mean, when we went to the World Series in 1980, the thing that I took out of that was we lost the series, but we had a parade as if we had won the series. And when you sit back and you think about it, you say, if it could be this good when you lose, what can it be like if you win? And so I think with guys like myself, who I think I had like 2 hits in the 80 series, Willie Wilson had 12 strikeouts in the 80 series, and that was well publicized. And I think that what you try to do is hope that you can get another shot at it. And by getting back there in 85, you have a chance to atone for a lot of things because you understand it because you've been there and you've been a part of it. And for me to lead the series in RBI, hit a home run in the series, I thought was pretty special. For Willie to lead the series in base hits, I thought that was pretty special. And I think that these are the things that kind of get missed in a series because so much is going on. But if you sit back and analyze it, there are a lot of guys who had a great series that don't get talked about. And I think that I was able to play with some of the best competitors in the game. When you play with Brett, or you play with Wilson, or Bo Jackson, or Amos Otis, you play with John Mayberry, Danny Tartable. I mean, it seems like guys who went out there to play, they played hard. UL Washington. These guys were tough players, and these were guys who came to play every day, and they came to win every day. They broke up double plays. They did everything they had to do to win the ball game. And those are the kind of guys that I was happy to go into the game with every night because I knew that whatever you got from these guys was going to be 100%.
Did picking cotton down in Greenville really help make you become one of the best defensive second basemen in the history of the game?
My dad thought so. I didn't think so. I mean, if you've ever picked cotton, Google it up, guys. If you've ever picked cotton, it's not the best job in the world. It's hot. You've got this long sack, and you're dragging it through sections of land, and you ever seen a cotton boll? I think I think it's 5-sided, but it's really real sharp. So to get the cotton out, you have to go in like this and pull it out. And you know how much cotton you got to pick a pound of cotton, right? So that's what that was all about. So that was my summer job for a while, and I think my dad sent us back to Mississippi in the summer to keep us out of trouble in the city. But believe me, it's a character builder, to say the least.
How did you develop your fielding skills?
I developed my fielding skill from my infield coach, Joe Tanner, in the baseball academy. I mean, he had a unique way of fielding, and he would hit me ground ball after ground ball after ground ball. And when he got tired, he would put the machine up and throw me balls through the machine until I got tired. But it was all about just understanding your left foot from your right foot, understanding that the principles of fielding a ground ball. And I think those are the things that really helped. When I went to the academy, I went as an outfielder, and we had an inter-squad game, and we didn't have a third baseman, so I went in to play third base, and I was there 6 months. Then I moved to shortstop, came all the way through the minors as a shortstop. And when I got to the big leagues, then I looked around and I said, well, Cookie's probably going to retire before Freddie, so now I better go learn how to play second base. So when you get to the major leagues, it's all about opportunity. When you're at the lower levels, I want to be a shortstop, I want to be a second baseman. But when you get to the major leagues, it's about what do I have to do to stay here? Whether it be an outfielder, catcher, I don't care. So you look for your opportunities, and then when you get them, you just try to make the best of them.
Were you the best defensive second baseman of all time?
I think so. Well, Bill, I think that I'm usually more humble than that, but
He is, believe me.
but I think that there comes a time when you hear so many things about different players and who could do this, who could do that, but when I came through, nobody knew about AstroTurf. Nobody knew how to play AstroTurf, and when they put our team together, our outfielders had the same bodies as our infielders. I mean, we were all lean, and we were all athletic, and we're all quick. And where the turf separated guys is when they came from their grass fields to our field, and that's where the separation starts right there.
Well, you redefined the position.
Well, it was fun. If I had to play on turf all over again, I would do it because it showed everything that you had. It showed your quickness. It showed your agility. It just was one of those innovative things that was just right on time for me. And we'd go to Detroit where they had the high grass and they hit a ball to your left and you have to run by, stop, and go back and get it. So that's what I used to tell Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell, But I mean, I think that the turf was awesome. I mean, it wasn't the best for your body, but I think once they got rid of the first turf and brought in the second phase of turf, I thought that separated our team from every team that came into Kansas City.
There were so many great players here over the All-Star break, and I was lucky enough to visit with many of them. And Reggie Jackson said, you saved more runs than he drove in. John Schuerholz, the architect of the Royals and the Atlanta Braves, said definitely the greatest second baseman ever. Cal Ripken, Mike Schmidt, Barry Larkin. Anyone I talked to said, you're certainly Hall of Fame worthy in any way that they could. They would support you. What do comments like that mean to you? And the love that you feel here tonight, what do you think it would mean to these people for you to be in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame?
Well, Bill, I think I've always felt the love here in Kansas City. I think that when I think about the Hall of Fame, and I think about guys who had great careers who have never been considered for the Hall of Fame, but they usually don't live in the city that they played in. And there's too many guys out there who had great careers, but they need the Hall of Fame to validate it for them. They need to be told that, hey, you're in the Hall of Fame to realize what kind of career you really had. You have to be able to evaluate your career. You have to be able to understand where you stand. Whether you're in the Hall of Fame or not, your peers know. And when you're around your peers and they acknowledge who you are and they acknowledge your ability to play, that far outweighs any vote for the Hall of Fame. Because the people who are voting on you never played. And I think, too, for all of you out here tonight, since I did grow up here and played my entire career here, we had so much success here as a team. We had tons of individual success, the Royals Hall of Fame, the statue, the number retiring. To me, being able to walk down the street every day, go where I go, see a lot of you same people, you guys know who I am. We discuss baseball, we talk baseball, and to me, that gives me that feeling of being in the Hall of Fame every day. But if I'm ever elected to the Hall of Fame, it's for all of you guys. It's for all of you who think I should be there. And if I am elected and I do give a speech, it's going to be for you guys, because you guys have made it so special for me being here in Kansas City that I have nothing but good feelings. I have nothing but good thoughts, because every day I walk out of my door and see people and talk baseball, and that's what this thing is all about. Is being able to play a game that you love, continue to share with people their memories about what their experiences were with our ball club, with our players. And a lot of times when I talk to fans about baseball, they're not talking about me. You know, they may be talking about Amos Otis or Hal McRae or George Brett or Paul Splitter. You know, it's not just me. It's about their experiences that made this team what it was, and their desire to see this team win again. And I think right now they're probably a lot as close now as they've been in a long time.
Having spent basically every day this summer with you working on the book, I know how much the Royals mean to you. How difficult was the parting of the ways?
Well, Bill, I think it was tough because it was something new. You know, I'd been in this arena for a long time, and I think that when it initially happens, you're hurt, you're disappointed, you say a lot of things that you mean it at the time because it makes sense to you at the time. But I think that anytime you have a parting of the ways when you've been together for so long, you know, sometimes it's better to just let everything speak for itself. Sometimes it's better to just get away from it for a while and then see where it goes from there. But I'm beyond that situation. You know, the headline in the paper today says that I'm still bitter or still angry or whatever it might be. That's not even close to being the truth. I mean, I've gone well past that situation, and all I'm trying to do now is give the fans an insight to my career, how I got started. So I don't want anybody to take away from this book that this is a book about the Royals, because it's not. They just play a small chapter in my life after baseball. But this is about my life. It's about my experiences. Hopefully you'll get some laughs out of it at certain times. But it just gives you an insight to my feelings about the guys that I played with, the teams that I played on, and the success we had as a team.
Do you think you'll ever step foot in the stadium again?
Well, Bill, I tell you, there's a chapter in the book that says never say never.
Covered yourself well.
but I mean, I think that when I coached for Tony Muser, and Tony, I really enjoyed coaching for him because he had a great respect for the game of baseball. And Tony always said, never say never, never say always. It's just most important to be right at that particular time. And I think that once it comes out, you can't take it back. But I think that basically what you're trying to do is just let time do its thing. You know, you can only beat that horse so many times. You know, you got to let it go. And I think that as a person, regardless of whether you guys just say if you guys like a guy a lot, as if you're showing the love for me. But if every time you read something about me, I'm bashing the Royals, or if every time you read something about me, I'm negative on this or negative on that, eventually I'm going to hurt myself in that situation. So you have to kind of, Whitney Houston had a movie that I remember called Waiting to Exhale. And sometimes you just got to take a deep breath and move on, and that's what I did.
I think that's the perfect part to end. I don't know where Bob Snodgrass went, but I believe that we're going to let people ask questions from the audience.
Okay. Great.
I see a microphone set up over here, so maybe so everyone can hear you. If you'd want to step over to the microphone, and I have no idea what time it is. It may be midnight. Hope not.
7:30.
7:30. Perfect. Bob, is this?
Okay, sir, why don't you go ahead and start?
You played for a lot of managers and worked for several. I'd love to know who you enjoyed playing for the most and why.
Oh, I tell you, I had three really favorite managers. Jack McKinn was one because he really liked young guys. He understood young guys. He went to bat for me in the minor leagues, and he went to bat for me to come to the major leagues and get my first taste of being in the big leagues. I like Whitey Herzog because Whitey allowed me to go out and just play the game. You know, he didn't micromanage the game. He basically said, as long as you make good decisions, you'll never hear from me. And that I appreciated that. Dick Hauser would probably be my favorite manager because Dick saw in me something that none of the other guys saw. He saw not only a defensive guy, but he saw an offensive guy. Yeah. And in 1983, when George got hurt, he moved me into the third spot in the lineup. And that was my first opportunity to be Raw's Player of the Year. So, and I think just the progression of how things went between 83 and 87, he just put me in a position to show that I was more than just a glove guy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Really miss you on the broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ma'am, your question?
In December of 1973, I was in Sarasota, Florida, and had the opportunity to tour the baseball academy, and it was really amazing. Why did it close, and what were the circumstances? And your comments on that, please.
You know, I may not be exact on this, but the only thing that I've been able to hear is that it closed because prior to the new stadium, some baseball people here might know better, prior to the stadium opening in 1973, there was a construction strike. And people close to Mr. K convinced him that if he closed the academy, then he would save the money that it would take if he had to play in Old Municipal Stadium another year. And until Mr. K passed away, he always said that was the biggest mistake he ever made, was closing the baseball academy. But it did last 4 years. And in the 4 years, we had over 15 players play in the major leagues. And the more prominent one now would be Ron Washington, manager of the Texas Rangers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who was your favorite pitcher to hit and your least favorite to hit against?
Depends on how I was swinging at the time. But I always liked any left-hander. But I think they're all tough at times. I hit well against knuckleballers. That was one thing I did well. But I think the bigger the challenge, especially against lefties, I thought I like hitting off Ron Guidry, as tough as he was. I like the competition. Frank Tanana, when anybody who threw left-handed but really challenged you, I like that. Right-handed, there were a lot of right-handers I didn't like too well because of the slide. I think Fergie Jenkins was one of the toughest guys for me to face right-handed. Nolan Ryan didn't bother me much because he just threw hard, and I didn't really mind the fastball. But it was those guys that could speed you up and slow you down. Guys like Jack Morris was a tough guy to face. Blyleven was a tough guy to face. So I can give you a whole list of names because I played at a time where you had a bunch of Hall of Famers.
Sir.
Frank, I want to make two statements. One is on behalf of Kansas City, I want to thank you and the Kansas City Royals from the mid-'70s to the mid-'80s for being one of the best baseball teams in America.
Thank you. Thank you.
Number two is you should be in the Hall of Fame. Your statistics says you're supposed to be there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hey, Phil.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that one. In 2011, African American players in the major leagues was about 8.2%, and coming down from a high of about 20. Well, actually, it was 28% in 1975, your second year. Can you give us a historical perspective and then what you think it's going to take to change the future so we can get more African American young men in the major leagues?
Well, Phil, I tell you, you're a historian, so you know probably a lot more than I know about this subject. But basically, in the 70s, you just had more black players playing baseball. When you look at the Royals teams that won, when you look at the guys who were on the field on a daily basis, you had John Mayberry at first, me at second, UL at short. You had Willie and Amos and Al Cowens in the outfield, and Hal McRae was your DH. So there was a lot of black players on the field at that particular time. But over time, whether it be through lack of drafting, teams were looking more for the instant gratification of going to Latin America. The academies left the United States and went to Latin America. And I think that was part of the problem. I think if we had invested in the United States like Mr. K did, rather than taking these academies to Dominican Republic and places like that, I think that would help. But Major League Baseball, in starting the RBI program, and that's reviving baseball in inner city, has made some strides in that area. With the Urban Youth Academy in Compton, California, another academy that they're building in New Orleans, and with plans to build one in Philadelphia. I think they're making some strides in trying to turn that the other way, but I think that we have to encourage at the lower levels more African American and minority kids to play the game. And kids have more options today than we had. When I came up, it was football, basketball, baseball. That's it. Now they have soccer, and they have a lot of other things that they do that really can distract. But for baseball, it's not an easy game to play. It's not an easy game to practice. We're playing at the hottest part of the season. It's an expensive game to outfit, and guys really have to want to play baseball because there's so many facets of the game that you have to eventually be good at. You know, from base running to defense to offense to hitting to pitching, whatever it might be. It's a thinking man's game, and I think that's what makes baseball difficult. But I think it takes the efforts at the lower levels to getting kids excited about the game, and through what you guys do at the Boys and Girls Club. Those are the things that get kids excited about one sport or another.
You know, and I don't want to interrupt this gentleman, but on the 4th of July, Frank called me and he said, you know, you want to make a little short road trip. We went to Kansas City, Kansas to an RBI All-Star baseball tournament. It had to be 105 degrees out there. They did a really neat thing. It was a reverse retirement of number 20. Every kid on every team wore number 20. And the way that these kids got number 20 was by writing an essay or saying, you know, what Frank White meant to them or what the Royals meant to them. And a majority of these kids were black, and when Frank showed up, the kids were excited, but the moms and dads went out of their minds. Amazing to see. And Frank has certainly done his role, Phil, in making sure that young people have a place to play in KCK and KCMO.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Sir?
Frank, as impressive as 8 Gold Gloves are, we know it should be 9.
Well, thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
What were your thoughts when you found out Harold Reynolds robbed you of the Gold Glove that year? Did he ever apologize to you and tell you deserved it?
You know, honestly, I can say that was the only year that I really expected to win a Gold Glove. All the other years that I won a Gold Glove, I never expected to, because I know as long as people have to vote on things, that could go one way or the other. So I chose not to think about it, and if it happened, I'd be excited about it. If it didn't happen, I'd keep moving. But when you play 150 games and you make 4 errors in a season, and you make only 4 throwing errors, and all the 4 throwing errors are to 4 different first basemen. So I went almost 1,000 chances and never missed a ball. And Billy Buckner was on our team, and he says, I play with a lot of guys, but I've never played with a guy that never missed a ball. So that year, I never booted a ground ball, never dropped a fly ball. And that gave me a lot of hope that I would be the first to win 9 Gold Gloves. So when it didn't happen, and naturally, you know, I was very upset. But at the same time, the fans of Kansas City also were upset. And so we had a luncheon in the stadium club, and so the fans presented me with a nice gold glove. So it was really kind of neat though. But every time I see Harold now, I says, man, that gold glove really taking you a long way. Baseball tonight, that a boy.
Yeah.
He's a great guy though, super.
Sir?
After you got done with your playing career, you set your hat towards being a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And when that didn't come to fruition, you spent some time in the broadcasting booth.
Yes.
And I just want to pass my personal feelings on. I think you're the best TV commentator in baseball in America, frankly. And, would really love to hear that there's some possibility that you might be back in the booth in some capacity, commenting on baseball in the future, because I frankly think you're the best one in the United States at it.
Well, thank you very much. I can't really speak to that. I mean, I have no control over that aspect of the game. That has to be that's between Fox and the Royals themselves. The thing that I want to say about the broadcast booth is that going into something that you know totally nothing about was scary. And to be able to work with Paul Splittarff and Ryan Lefevre and Kevin Shank, guys who had been in the business for a long time and knew how to, it was almost like coming to the Royals for the first time. I mean, I walked in the booth and I told Ryan, I said, man, I'm the rookie here. Even though I knew baseball, there's a way to do things, and I didn't know what that way to do things was. And so he was good. Paul showed me how to study. He showed me how to prepare. He showed me what periodicals to buy, and then basically you just sit and you listen and you absorb it all. And I think without those guys, it wouldn't have worked as well for me at all. And I think that the Royals gave you the best test, because if your team is playing well all the time, it makes that process easy. So when you're trying to get things going for yourself and you're not winning on a regular basis, now you have to play both ends of it, and you got to figure how to get through those tough games when things aren't going well and they're long, and you have to be entertaining to the fans. But my main objective in the booth was to really be a coach for you guys. I wanted to try to look at every replay, and I wanted to try to find something in that replay that you at home thought you saw, but you didn't see. And then I wanted to be able to point it out and have you at home say, oh, wow, okay.
I've been watching baseball for decades, and I learned something new every time I saw one of your broadcasts.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. White?
Yes, sir.
I played on a high school baseball team, and the All-Stars were drafted and went to Class A ball, and you never heard from them after that. Is there a mindset, or is it determination to climb the ladder from A to Double A to Triple A and then the majors? Or is it other qualities that they have?
Well, I think there are a lot of qualities involved, but I think a lot of times what players run into, and I manage rookie ball, and what you run into a lot of times, if a player comes from a real small community where he is the guy, so he may have maybe one or two guys in that league that can even hit him as a pitcher, or may have a pitcher that's pretty dominant in that league, but it may only be one or two guys in the league that can hit him. But when you go to rookie ball, now everybody throws 90 to 95 miles an hour, and so where in the lower levels you can take a few days off, but when you get into pro ball, every day you have to meet that challenge every day. And a lot of times guys aren't ready to meet that mental challenge of being good every day, and they say, man, I throw 95, but will they hit it? Or you throw a good breaking ball and somebody hits it. You're not used to that, so you have to get your mindset ready to compete. And a lot of guys at that level, especially if you're out of high school, aren't ready to compete. And so if you listen to scouts talk, they talk about topping out. And topping out means as you go up a level, the game speeds up. And so that may be as far as you can go. And it really has nothing to do with your mindset. That's where your ability takes over. And that's why it's so difficult to play in the major leagues, is because the game gets fast. And when the game speeds up, then guys have to be able to slow the game down in their mind and still make the right reactions to what's in front of them. But I think that's what happens a lot of times, is that it just, ability-wise, guys get tripped up because the game gets faster as they go up the ladder. And then you also have other extenuating circumstances, that guys taking better care of themselves and rededicating themselves to the game, things like that.
In closing, I'd like to say, I hope that you get a major league managing job in the near future.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I'll tell you what, let's do 3 more questions, 1 from this side, 2 from that side. Okay, sir?
Yeah, Frank. September the 4th, 1950 wasn't very long ago.
Oh, really?
And I think we could probably argue about this, whether you were actually better than me or I was better than you at second base, but I always thought I was.
Okay.
Until tonight, but I realized I was wrong.
Well, thank
But
you.
I didn't really have a question. I have a little short story to share with you. I was in a store the other day, and I was speaking to the owner. And as usual, I said, I love Frank White. I love Frank White. I watched him all the time. He was smooth to the left and he was smooth to the right. Well, there was an individual standing behind me that I didn't realize at the time. And his name is Jim Spalding, and he couldn't be here tonight. But the owner was laughing at me as I was talking about praising you. And at the time, he took out his cell phone. He didn't look at any number. He didn't look up a number. He just punched in a number. And the owner was laughing. And I turned around and looked at him again, and he puts the phone up to his head and he goes, Frank, I got a guy here that says he loves you. What's the deal here? What's the deal? And he asked you if you knew someone.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I'm his nephew. And I don't know whether the guy believed me or not at first, but and you did then when you said, oh, yes, I do. So, and he handed me the phone, and Frank was nice enough to stand there not knowing exactly, and that's a hard thing to do. You don't know who's on the other end. But he stood there and he talked to me, or he sat there and talked to me for 5 minutes, or 10 minutes on the telephone, which was like a giant thrill. And if you've ever said hello on the phone and it's Frank's voice on the other side and you're as big a fan as I am, it's like, gosh darn. Seems like just the other day I was at the ballpark at 22nd Brooklyn and watching this guy play. And I'm going back and I'm thinking, what about Vic Power? You remember him?
Yes, sir.
Number 7, first base.
Uh-huh.
Hector Lopez, number 10 at third base. I could go through and name you those 1952 from the Blues through the beginning of the Athletics.
Awesome.
And I'm thinking that may be where I can beat you. If I can't beat you at second base, maybe I can be able to handle that
I
someday.
can get the A's through the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for your service.
Very much. Thank you.
I have 2 comments and then 1 question. Frank, I live 140 miles away and have been a season ticket holder for a long time. And I remember when you used to come down to Jefferson City as a guest of Senator Wiggins. And even at that time, I thought to myself, this man has a lot of class. And I never have forgotten that. And number 2, I was teaching school at the time, and one of my students, knowing I was a big baseball fan, brought a picture in, which I did have you eventually sign. It was you bird hunting, and the picture had McGorry, Herzog. I think Freddie was in the picture. You were in the picture, and I just tickled to death that one of my kids would bring that in to me, and I was so glad to have you sign it. Of course, you recognized it. And number 3, my question is, I don't really know too much of the details, and being 140 miles away, I don't always get out of the Kansas City paper. Just what was the details with Fox and the Rawls? I mean, was it just they just wanted to go a different way? I'm like the other gentleman. I thought you did a great job on the broadcasting. I thought any critiques you did were constructive criticism. I guess they could have been looked at otherwise. But tell me, just personally, what did they say, or did they just say we want to go in another direction? And with the club thing, because I don't know if you probably know this, but during the All-Star game, even with this rift going on, they had your picture up on the scoreboard one time, and the crowd just went crazy. They just clapped and were just glad to see your picture on the scoreboard, even with all this going on.
Well, I tell you, a little bit is covered in the book, but I think that the only thing that I got out of that whole situation with the TV broadcast was that the Royals felt that I was too negative for the broadcast. That's the only thing that I got out of it. But when you get into that environment, and when I was working for the Royals, to me that was where I kind of wanted to be. The TV thing was sort of helping them out because Paul wasn't doing well and things like that. So I never really looked at that as going to be my lifelong thing from that point on. But I think that, like I say, that's the only thing I got from Fox was that I was too negative in the broadcast booth, and that's why they wanted to make a change. But now that it's all said and done, I do regret that I can't do that for you guys anymore. But I just feel like it's just time to move on past that, and I just feel like it's just been beat up enough and been talked about enough. And I think anything that you do, I think the thing that you want to take away from it is the fact that you did it well. And I think it's nice to be missed, and it really is. It really is. So, thank you.
Sir?
Elliot,
Frank?
how are you?
I'm good. Frank, I could echo what a lot of people here said already, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I am going to dovetail on the very first question that you had tonight about managers. You said Dick Hauser was your favorite, and probably for personal reasons. He was mine too, for personal reasons. But Wally Bunker told me one time that Earl Weaver was 2 to 3 innings ahead of what was going on in the game. Who would you say, amongst all the managers you played for, was 2 to 3 innings ahead of what's going on in the game? And the answer, so we don't take everybody's time here, the answer is probably one name.
Not really, Elliot. I think that when you look back in the 60s and 70s, you had managers. They ran the game. They knew who was the pinch hitters for that night. They knew who was in the bullpen that night. So they didn't have the luxury of guys today having bench coaches and things like that. It was just a manager, his pitching coach, hitting coach, and first base coach, third base coach. It was five guys, but now 5 or 6 guys. So now you got bench coaches now, which it's supposed to be that guy that keeps managers ahead of themselves. Now, do all managers use their bench coach? I doubt it. They should, but some don't. You take a guy like Jim Leland. Jim Leland, he's from the old school. Even though he doesn't have a bench coach listed on his roster because he knows what's going on. So all those guys back in the day, they had to know if they made a move, what the next move was going to be. And that was the beauty of watching guys like Whitey and Dick and Jack and Billy Martin and Ralph Houck and Sparky Anderson, all those guys do their thing because they knew what move would be made if they made their move. So today, it's more about matchups. It's more about having a setup guy and a closer. Back in those days, your setup guy was your closer. He pitched the 8th inning, he pitched the 9th inning. Where today is more groomed toward making money. It's more groomed toward your closer wanting to come in the game in the 9th, but don't want anybody on base. But that's the reality of the game. The reality of the game is that your relievers your relievers have a situation. We had just starters and relievers, and relievers became relievers because they couldn't start. But whoever was hot, they got the ball. And so the relievers were trying to figure out, how do we get paid in this whole process of thing. The closers were getting paid, the starters were getting paid. How do relievers get paid? So then they came up with a new category called holds. Holds is when a guy come in the game with men on base and don't let any of them score. Because in the old days, when starters had the ball and they didn't trust the guy coming out of the bullpen, they didn't get the ball up. So it's. But I think it's just the evolution of the game and where the game has gone, and I think that some of it is good, but I think it's just the way it is. I think managers it's almost like playing backgammon. You know, you have some basic moves you got to make, and a lot of managers don't like to deviate from those moves.
Frank, you brought up pitching, but can you imagine a manager coming out after the top of the seventh with his team winning 2-1 and telling Warren Spahn or Juan Marichal, you've had enough tonight, you've thrown 110 pitches, we're going to take you out of the game? What would they have done?
Not in those games, not in those days. But I mean, we had a guy, Dennis Leonard. I mean, a lot of guys who remember Dennis Leonard. I mean, Leonard was a horse. I mean, Leo. If Leo had a lead after the seventh inning, he threw nothing but fastballs. He wanted to close the game down. I mean, this guy had back-to-back years with 20-plus complete games. And there were no pitch counts and things like that. And I think that everything's designed to last, to make things last longer. Or you get a guy who, like Mark Guba's out, they say, well, he can't throw like that because he's going to hurt his arm. If he hurts it 10 years down the road, that's baseball. But you can't approach it like, I got to limit this innings, and try to stretch him out to 15 years. The game is not designed that way. The game is designed for the best of the best to play at the highest level, as long as they can. And like the old timers used to say, you go as hard as you can, as long as you can, and when it breaks, go home. That's what they say. That's what you say.
Okay, we're going to bring Steve back out to kind of close this down from the library, but I want to mention two things. One, Frank and Bill will be out, or actually set up here in just a few minutes. If you want to have your book signed, they'll be happy to do that. We're going to be selling books out in the lobby, and you can come back in. But I wanted to explain, too, just a critical element from the part of being the publisher of this book. You've met the author. You've met the co-author. There was a key person involved here in this project that really kept us all motivated through the process, our co-author. Teresa White, would you just stand up for a moment? And if you all would just greet Teresa, she helped us out just a bunch.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Bill. That was absolutely fantastic. I loved every minute of it.